Good afternoon, Coldwell Banker, George Realty. We have a special guest here today from Top Escrow, Trissette DePaul. And one of the great things is they are going to give us a fantastic training today, but they also work on business opportunities and mobile homes. So we're looking forward to learning from them. And I am going to now share screen. So sit back and enjoy the training. Thank you for coming. Okay, Trissette, I'm going to put the camera to you and you can sit here and control it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
In the driver's seat.
All right. Keep that too.
Nice to meet everybody. I'm Trissette DePaul, and I'm one of the escrow officers at Top Escrow. I'm in the Covina location. You may know Linda. I'm over with Linda. And I've been in escrow for over 20 years. I started out on a refinance unit when that was a big thing, and I converted over to REOs back in 2008. And ever since then, I've just been primarily doing residential resales. I also do mobile home escrow, so we'll touch on that as we go through today's training, just to kind of give you a little bit of information on what the difference is on mobile home transactions versus your standard residential resale transaction. And then we're going to go through some expectations, what to expect from escrow, how to have a successful escrow, and then some real life escrow scenarios. In order for me to best serve you, I would like to make this engaging and just have you guys ask questions as we go. So if you have a question, I'm completely okay with you taking yourself off mute. And to give me a better understanding of where you guys are at and your understanding of escrow, it would help to know how long you've been in the industry as a real estate agent and like how many escrows you've done, so I know how to adjust today's training. So if you want to like take yourself off of mute or put in the chat maybe how many transactions you've done or how many years you've been in the business, so that way I can tailor this class for you. And I know, Cecilia, you said you've been in the business, you've been a real estate agent for 10 years?
No, only joined this. I got my license during 2004, but not active because I work with the bank.
Okay. Okay, then does anybody online want to share?
Yeah, I do have a one mobile home transaction completed so far.
Oh, you've done one.
Yeah, I done one. Represent the buyer.
Oh, the buyer.
I'm really interested in, I've been licensed for 22 years, but I'm interested, even if we have to do another training on business opportunity,
Yeah.
because I don't know how those work.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah, we'll do one of those.
yeah, we can do one of those. Okay, so I'm just gonna,
I do have a one active business opportunity. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
right. And the reporting that Ann mentioned for the business opportunities, escrow will order all that.
Yeah, we'll do
The
it.
notice to
We
creditors
we
and the
do the
publishing.
escrow.
Right, yeah, so there's
Yeah.
no title, and similarly with mobile homes, there's no title. So there's no title company. It's
Oh,
all done,
okay.
it's escrow only. So escrow handles the funds, and then we do the transfer documents with the state, the Department of Housing and Community Development.
Oh, yeah, the HCD.
Right,
That's the
HCD.
one. Yeah,
Yes.
I've seen that.
Yeah, it's pretty much DMV, but for mobile homes, not cars. But it's very similar because for mobile homes, the registered owner gets a certificate of title. So the same way you would get like a pink slip or a title for a car, you get one for your mobile home when you get a decal, yearly registration, the same way you would for a car. You get it fixed on the mobile home, and then when you do the transfer, it's only escrow. When escrow closes,
Yes.
then we send the application to HCD, and then it takes a few months, and then within a few months, HCD sends a certificate of title.
And they go through the HOA.
Yes, if it's in a park, so if the mobile home is in a park,
Right.
the buyer will have to get park approved
Because there's
before we can
multiple ways,
close.
because we had an escrow where it was a mobile home, but it was on land and they sold the land too.
Oh.
But
okay.
most instances
Okay,
are like she
can.
said, where mobile homes are usually
For
at a
lease.
mobile home park. You
Right,
gotta pay a monthly thing, right? So
right,
so you
there's
have
a space,
transfer.
so if it's on, if they're purchasing the land,
Mhm.
it can be done in the same escrow, but the deed for the land will be transferred to the buyer, and then the mobile home is separate. So
Then
that'll
what
get
about
transferred
the
separately.
actually land lease?
Right, but if it's a land lease,
Yeah.
then,
They pay the rent.
then the buyer has to get qualified,
Yeah. so they
for the
go
park.
through The HOA.
and then they have strict requirements, so a lot of them like are
Right.
age
Very,
restrictions, like,
very strict.
right, very strict. So that whole process with the park, they'll meet with the park manager, complete their applications,
Yeah.
usually in person.
They check the income, the.
They check
credit.
everything.
But that's why, like she's saying, when it's a transaction, when there's no title, it's more, it's very important on the escrow company, right?
Right.
Because there's no title, right?
Relying
So
on-
everything is relying on escrow, the liability, the
Mhm.
transfer,
Mhm.
versus when we do a regular residential or real
Yes.
estate transaction, we have a
Uh-huh.
big insurance company, like a
Yeah.
title company for
Right.
that. So
Right.
so the main key is making sure you choose an escrow officer and an escrow, company that knows what they're doing and has communication. So like I
Yeah.
said, that's why I brought her.
Right, right, because I'm pretty much the only contact, and there's
Yeah.
no like grant deed, there's no insurance
You
You
see?
have
on the
agent
transaction.
card?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll give you my
Yeah.
card.
But
Yeah.
she's gonna go ahead and start. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so, okay, guys, we'll continue. So that's just a little bit about me. I'll give you guys an overview. Let me minimize the screen. I'm gonna try to keep an eye on the chat, so if you guys have questions, feel free. So, I don't really know you guys' experience, so I'm just gonna touch on what escrow is. If you already know this information, forgive me, we'll just kind of touch on what escrow does. What we need to have a successful escrow as far as what we need from real estate agents, and then what we need from our principals. Our principals are the seller and buyer. So if you hear me referring to principals, that's who I'm referring to. Then we'll go over escrow scenarios and then closing date, what happens on our close of escrow.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start with you guys. You guys are the agents. So
Yeah.
expectations from a realtor. Some of this, oh, you know what I missed, sorry, let me go back one. What is escrow? A lot of people get a signed offer and they're like, woohoo, we're going into escrow, we're in escrow, but what does that really mean? So one is we're holding funds. So you should, as you know, one of the first steps when we get a contract is buyer sends their money into escrow.
Yeah.
99% of the time by wire transfer, because that's what the contract's defaulted
Right.
to. So we hold funds, not only the earnest money, but other funds that are coming in, closing funds, lender funds. We hold all that. And then at the end of the transaction, we give a final accounting of what happened with all those funds. And that's why you have a closing statement. If you represent the buyer, you'll have a buyer closing statement. If you represent the seller, you'll see it. But that's our accounting, showing what money came in and what money is going out. So there's 100% transparency with the funds.
And they're still called the trust account, right?
Yes, and yeah, exactly. So all the money is going into a trust account. So it's an account held in trust where those funds are only buyer funds,
Yes.
like buyer or seller funds.
Yeah.
They're not commingled with like our operating. We can't use those funds to pay anything other than
Mhm.
trust.
Mhm.
And our regulator, the DFPI, Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, and protects the consumer. So it's very strict as far as those funds. We have to give a monthly accounting. We do a daily accounting to make sure there's no commingling of funds. So the funds are safe and then we're insured and,
Mhm.
those funds are protected.
Yeah.
So one thing we do is hold funds. We also hold documents. Some documents that we hold are,
Have an agent.
oh yeah, welcome, whoever is coming in. Hi. Okay, welcome to the escrow class. We're just first going over what escrow does. We already hit on we hold funds. Next, we hold documents. Yes, yes.
I have a question because they usually ask, when I represent to the seller,
Mhm.
they do ask me that is this escrow be trust? Because they said that some escrow is independent.
Right.
Some they, under the broker.
Okay, yes.
What's the
So
difference?
Top Escrow is licensed as an independent
Yes.
company where we go through the department, the DFPI.
Yeah.
We're not broker, we're not licensed under the DRE. So the DFPI has more strict requirements.
And we
As
can
far
take
as-
escrows, and we can take escrows from anybody.
We can take escrow from in-house within this brokerage and then outside escrows. We can do escrows for anybody.
Yes.
All transactions were licensed and we're insured. So one of the main differences is like the DRE in-house, they don't do background checks.
Mhm.
They don't do like fingerprinting. They don't do the vetting. And they don't have the same financial reserves requirement where we have to have a financial backing to support the trust account. Say there's a loss for some reason,
We have
the
to.
DFPI has to have enough net reserves in our
Right.
operating account to cover any potential losses to protect. So everything is about protecting the consumer.
So that means independent. Oh,
I don't mind questions. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So so we hold documents. Yeah. Okay, so we do, of course, the documents we prepare, legal documents such as grant deeds, affidavits of death, trust certification. We hold everything until we're in a position to close. So we don't share, private information with anybody. We just hold it in our file until we're ready to close. Title clearance. So, when you get a transaction open and you receive the preliminary title report, escrow is responsible for making sure all those requirements are met. So title will give us like the blueprint, but they're not gonna go out and do the work and get it done.
Yeah.
So your escrow officer is the one that's ordering payoffs, getting liens released, collecting SIs, so on and so forth. So that's considered title clearance to make sure the buyer has a insurable title policy. And that's all needed before we can close escrow. Tax withholding. So we also do tax withholding. I believe we're gonna get into it. Yeah, we're gonna get into it. So there's two different taxes we're checking for. FERPTA, which is the foreign tax for sellers, and then capital gains tax. We're doing those checks to make sure if the seller has a tax liability, that's getting taken care of and your buyer is not at risk of being held liable for something once we're closed. Funds disbursement. At the end of the day, once our transactions close, we issue all the checks, we pay the commissions, we pay all parties. Anything that was listed in the contract as far as bills being paid, that's something we're gonna collect through the transaction and pay it out. And then finally, 1099 reporting. So our transactions get reported at the beginning of the following year where the transaction closed, and then the seller will get a statement when 1099 form from us, so that way they can handle their taxes. Okay, so that's what escrow is. Okay, now for you guys as real estate agents, here's some expectations that will give you a smooth transaction. And it sounds so easy, but the devil's in the details.
Yes,
So
so true.
really it comes down to the contract and like having boxes checked and things completed, amounts listed, those details is what we're looking at.
This is a good slide.
Yes, it is. Even how he started explaining the escrow, I've never heard someone say it that way. I love it.
Okay, so starting with, when you open escrow, typically you're gonna send us a fully executed contract. That's how we open escrow. It's giving us all the terms in the transaction. So one thing we ask is that it's fully executed, that it's signed. If it's not, we'll let you know what's missing. Again, in the details, page 16 has, the agent's information, contact phone number. So that way we're not I've received a lot of contracts and there's no contact information. So I'm Googling and relying. So, I mean, we'll do what we have to do, no problem. We'll get it done. Like, we're your advocate, but it's just helpful to have everything done. And then later, we're not going back trying to renegotiate something because, for instance, something small like the home warranty, it might say 600, but the box isn't checked, who's paying for it? So we would think, like, I'm gonna assume the seller's paying, but really is the seller paying? It was never checked, so it's not clear. So now we're going back and like you're trying to renegotiate something.
Right.
So it's just simple. It's just simple as that. Include addendums. So you're giving us the purchase agreement, but we need all the addendums because we don't know. Like, okay, we can check to see if there's a ratified offer and there was like addendums and if it was accepted, but after you're into escrow and you're doing some like repair or something's changing, don't forget to include escrow because we don't know unless it's given to us. And I've been at the closing table with clients where they're like, what happened to my seller credit? And it just makes them feel insecure
Yeah.
Yeah.
that we don't know, but it's just, if you have a TC, likely your TC is gonna get that to us, they know. And I know you guys get busy, but just if you can remember to give us addendums, it's just the biggest thing I would say is establishing a relationship with your escrow officer and communicate. Over communicate, you can over communicate, I don't mind. It just when you're under communicating and not providing us, then that's when,
Things get lost.
yeah, things get lost, you know. And, you know, we want you guys to look like rock stars that you are, and we don't want the customer to come back and feel like something was missed or hidden. So that's why we asked, just please send us all the addendums, and then we can do our amendments and make sure everything is accounted for. Okay, so when you're opening escrow, we see the terms, we got it. Okay, we know what's happening. Providing us all the contact information. So our California, some states like Washington, their contracts, they have contact information for sellers and buyers,
Wow.
phone numbers, email, address. California doesn't do that. So we don't know who, you know, so just like, hey, when you open the escrow, this is the buyer's information or sellers. That way we can hit the door running and, you know, collect the EMD. Otherwise, we're going to ask. I mean, we're just going to ask. So if you have a transaction coordinator, let us know. So that way we can loop them in on all the communication and the emails. If there's a lender involved and you're representing the buyer, just give us that information so we don't have to chase you for it, and we can just make this a smooth transaction. For listing agents, providing the commission split when you open escrow is super helpful. That way we don't have to chase that down, and we can just get everything in. Like when we're setting up our system, we can just do everything at once. Bam, it's done, it's correct. And then as we're moving along through the escrow, we're going to be collecting invoices. So just don't forget to include us in on invoices. We have the NHD, the home warranty, the termite, anything else that's being, you know, collected for in the contract. If there's termite, you know, termite work, then the completion. That way nothing is missed. I mean, we're going to pretty much know if it's in the contract and we don't have an invoice, we're going to know to ask for it. But sometimes things get added later. And I tell you all the time, I get termite reports and it was never in the contract.
Right.
But what if I didn't get that report and I never would have paid it because I didn't know I had to deal with it? So we don't want to miss anything because once we're closed, the money's dispersed.
Sure.
Now we're dealing, then it's going to be a problem.
Right.
So, so there's the invoices, and then I don't know how Coldwell does it, but as far as the commission, if there's like a CDA or not, but just getting signed commission, if there's a CDA, that's applicable, give us that information. My last thing was just for the addenda, which I mentioned, if there's any changes that happen during the course of escrow, just loop us in and we'll be more than happy to address that with you. Any questions so far? Okay.
Okay, we do our split internally, so you'll never get a CDA from us.
Wonderful.
Easy,
I know.
easy. Even better for me. I love that. Okay, perfect. Okay, so here's some expectations from a consumer, and it's helpful for you as agents to know what we're going to ask so you can prep your clients. Maybe you can, while you're meeting with them, listing the property, if say they're in a trust, if there was a death, you can ask them for it. It's good to know like of these special circumstances because you can prep them and we don't have to, you know, it won't be so painful. Okay, so what do we have here? Okay. Oh, okay, so buyer wiring funds. If the money's coming from some type of like investment or
401k.
401k, it's good to plan ahead because I've also experienced delays with transaction closing because they're trying to wire it in the day of or the day before closing, and sometimes it's a process. So if you understand where the money's coming from, let us know. We can have the conversation or you can have the conversation either way, but it's helpful to know if the money's coming from some type of investment account so they can plan that ahead of time because the money, it takes. Our escrow documents. So I know I've usually contact the seller and the buyer directly to coordinate escrow docs getting signed, so I usually take care of it unless an agent says, no, it's my client, I want to do it, then okay, no problem, we'll do that. But either way, it really is important to return the documents on time. The contract does specify, dates as far as when it needs to get returned. Specifically for like statement of information clearance and making sure their name is cleared. From the seller, it's vital because they're providing us with lien information, like who are the payoffs, who do we contact? If there's a solar, something that maybe wasn't on the contract, but they're letting us know, hey, we have solar panels. It's not always on the prelim, usually it is, but lien information, there's things we need in those documents. For buyers, a good one that I've been seeing a lot is getting the insurance information, because there's delays right now with getting insured. So getting that information back up, in a timely manner, it's all critical to having an on-time closing. Okay, provide lien information. So that's something we're gonna get with the seller. I don't want you guys to feel so overwhelmed and pressured, like we need to get all this information. You don't, like, we'll get it. But some agents, they do, like when they're opening escrow, they're saying, hey, there's solar panels, it's getting transferred or it's getting paid off. That way we know, what are we doing? Or some agents collect mortgage statements. You don't have to do that, but it's very helpful if you do. But again, don't feel pressured. These are just some things some agents do.
Do you require a wet signature on your escrow instruction?
We don't, just, that can be a DocuSign, so they can DocuSign all the easy stuff, and then just the grant deed and the proceeds form will require a notary. And then if there's like a trust or something, then that would get notarized. But yeah, and some sellers want to e-sign the easy stuff, and then we'll just, okay, e-sign that, and then let's get a notary for the notarized stuff. Yeah.
Excuse me, so you just mentioned about like a solar panel,
Mhm.
so all those information paperwork, the seller's agent have to take care of, or escrow also?
Yeah,
them?
yeah. So if there's a lease, let us know. If there's solar, let us know. Because if there's an existing lease,
Okay.
whether it's paid or not, if
Okay.
it's paid, perfect. We're just going to transfer the warranty to the buyer. If it's not paid, we need to know, is it getting paid off by the seller, or is the lease the new, like, did the buyer need to apply for the lease? Because the buyer will have to apply to take over the lease, and then we'll have to do the transfer.
And so what
Yeah.
happens is, if that's gonna happen, like she said, we will let the listing agent know, or we would call the seller, like Trisette said, and tell them you need to initiate the transfer.
Right.
The seller would initiate the transfer, but also then the solar would have to talk with the buyer, right?
Right.
Run their credit, and
Right.
all that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if there's financing, that's gonna need to be done before they can finalize the loan approval, because they need to know what they're paying for the lease.
So one of those documents have to complete before close, right?
Right, and the buyer, the buyer will complete it directly with the solar
Oh.
company.
Mhm.
So
There's timing involved.
essentially, yeah, there is, essentially, the solar company, I'll communicate with them, and they'll just ask for everyone's information, the buyer's, name, number, and email, and then they'll send a lease application to the buyer. And then they'll say, I don't see it, but I know it's happening, and then once the lease approves that buyer, then they'll send the lease assignment, and I'll get that signed. Yeah. Okay. Special circumstances, I listed a few, if you know your client is going out of town, going through a divorce,
Right.
divorced or getting divorced. If there's a concurrent closing, there should be an addendum, a contingent addendum, but, sometimes we don't get those. Just let us know if there's an, concur, so we can coordinate the closing with the other escrow. If there's been a recent change to the bank account, I listed that because sellers have given me one set of wiring instructions and then open a new account. So if you're aware of any of those things, if there's been a death and you know that there's been a death, let us know so we can deal with that, getting affidavits executed and requesting death certificates. Communicate, we already kind of went over that, how communication is just the most important thing in my opinion. 1099, so we're gonna ask for the seller's future mailing address. We're gonna, a lot of times they don't have it, they don't know. And usually I'll just say, do you have a family where you can get mail? and we'll use that while they're still working on getting a property. Sometimes we reach out to the agent for help if they're not responsive. But if you represent the seller, that's something that's something to know that we're gonna need. Okay, we'll go through a few scenarios, like special scenarios. Okay. Okay, so I have on here death and taxes. So,
Love it.
okay. Taxes on every transaction, every single escrow we process, there's 2 checks. One is FIRPTA, and that's the Foreign Investment Real Property Tax Act. So we have to check to see if the seller is a US citizen or a foreigner. If they are not a citizen, if they're a foreigner, we're going to have to withhold taxes. That's another thing to notify us upfront. If your seller is not a US citizen, let us know upfront, because we can try to like work with them and the IRS about, right, about getting the actual tax amount due so they don't over withhold. Because that's what's gonna happen. If we don't get that, that form from the IRS saying this is what you need to pay, then we're gonna have to go by, I think it's like 10 or 15%. Yeah, just depending on, right, it goes to the IRS.
You don't hold it.
So that's gonna happen, that check is done automatically. We ask for that. Now it affects you whether you represent the seller or the buyer, because the government puts the burden on the buyer to make sure the tax is paid. And if not, the buyer can be penalized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important, like she said. I think when we open escrow, I think our office, we always have opening questions, and that's one of the things we do ask the agent every time. Is the seller a foreigner or a US citizen, right?
Yeah.
So, and it, like she said, the more sooner we know, the better. Some agents we have great relationships with, guess what? They're calling us even before the offer is accepted. They're
Yeah.
talking to us when they get the listing.
Exactly.
Hey, and our seller is a foreigner. Guess what we're doing?
Yeah.
Do they have a CPA? We're starting to help them connect the dots, because a lot of agents, if they're not doing foreigners all the time, they may have 1 or 2 in the lifetime. So, you know,
Right.
you guys can lean on us to set our office to help with you guys for that.
Yeah, and then as part of my closing package, I send to both agents the non-foreign affidavit, I redact the social, just so you guys have it for your broker compliance and you know we did the check. Your buyer's good to go, that's done. The other tax that we check is the CalFIRPTA, which is a capital gains withholding, to the state of California. It goes to the Franchise Tax Board. If the property doesn't qualify for an exemption, if it's the seller's principal residence, then they can take the exemption. But if it's like an investment or income property, or vacant land, we're gonna have to withhold 3 1/3% of the sale price. That's just the standard withholding. If the buyer, if the seller wants to calculate like their gains, they can also do that. We just can't help them complete that section. They need to complete it on their own or with their CPA. And then we can do the alternate withholding. Since I'm touching on capital gains, if the seller is getting a replacement property and they're doing a 1031 exchange, just make sure that's also in the contract, or let us know, or do an addendum so we can work with an accommodator.
Now the exchange is still 180 days, right? Within 180 days.
For the exchange?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So those are the 2 taxes. But just to know, they're both prepayments. So it's not, they're not gonna have an additional payment. Whatever we withhold and send to the government, they're gonna credit it toward their SSN, and then it's like a prepayment. So next year when they reconcile, it's already paid. They don't have to pay again. Okay, and then we have death. Okay, so we handle every kind of transaction. We handle probate. A lot of times, when there's a death, if the property is already in a trust, we'll just kind of deal with the trust and find out who the survivor is. If there's 2 trustees, then the living trustee will sign. Otherwise, if it passes to a successor, then the successor trustee will sign. I'm gonna get into requirements for trust shortly. If it's going through probate, the seller would have already been working with a probate attorney.
I just wonder, have you ever, had this situation during the transaction, not close escrow yet? But either one, the seller or buyer, one party has somebody dying. Yeah, what's going on?
I've had, okay, not during the escrow, not during the escrow,
Okay.
but like I've had a lot of transaction where the parents die or someone dies, and then like within a month or two, the kids are
Oh,
selling
okay.
it. So either they're going through probate, if it's in a trust, and they can get it right into escrow. Sometimes there's a trust, but they never recorded the trust.
Right.
So it's still showing in their name as an individual,
Right.
and they have to do this like Hegstad petition and go to court for that, but that's kind of quicker. So I've dealt with a lot of different scenarios, but I've never dealt with someone dying while escrow's open. It would depend on how they're holding title and who's on title.
Right.
So if it's a joint tenant and like the spouse, it's husband and wife, joint tenant, and there's
Well-
one, we could still close with a
Right.
death certificate. But if it, just depending on how they're holding title, because that says how, what happening with,
What if she's not entitled, what happened? That's the case now.
No.
What's your case?
I was
No,
gonna leave
it's
the
not.
house,
Uh-huh.
he went on vacation and he died. 2 months ago, and he was only entitled.
He was the only one on title?
so that's gonna be
So
probate, yeah.
I told him that we have to wait, now we're doing the probate.
Yes.
How long do I have to wait to put their house in the market? Because they were married for 40 years.
So you gotta wait for the probate, it's going through probate right
Yes,
now?
it's going to
So are they telling the probate court that they wanna sell the property?
I told them.
Okay, cause you gotta wait, right?
They need
So
their
the-
letters of administration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how long do we have to wait after that?
That's a good, I don't know how
It's the
lengthy,
court. It
the,
could
it's
be
the
a year.
courts, yeah.
It could be a
The,
year, it could be-
do they, if they can give you the attorney contact information on who is it,
What?
so is it, who's the heir? Is it the child?
Is the wife,
The wife.
Oh, so the wife, but she wasn't on title.
she was not entitled.
Maybe
Yeah.
give her, you guys exchange the information.
Yeah, 'cause if I
Give her
can
the
get the-
property
if I can
address
get
and then
the-
She can.
Yeah.
do research.
They have 2 properties.
Okay,
Okay, yeah, so what I would do
Yeah, so-
is I would get, and I can do this for you, is I can reach out to the probate attorney and find out where they're at in the process. What is their court date? When is it scheduled for?
yeah.
That way we know, like, how long are we looking? And find out. I have one right now that's been sitting in escrow, I think this one is a Hegstad petition, and it's been open for like 2 months, and it's just, we're waiting on the Hegstad, where they had a trust, but they didn't record the trust.
So my sister's, husband's family, his cousins, I think that happened. I have to talk to you now.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know you knew that. I'm gonna call, I'm gonna ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and attorneys, they're not quick to respond. They're not, and then it's just waiting on the courts. You have to wait on the court here, the court date, and then seeing with the judge. They appoint someone, so they appoint like an administrator of the estate.
Right.
So that if they appoint her, they'll probably appoint the wife. I mean, they have to send out to see who can test it. I think they send out letters, like if they had children.
Or heirs,
There's like,
and then
yes,
they gotta come
heirs.
up forward.
And
If
there's
they
like
don't-
there's a waiting period. I just don't know the dates offhand,
Mhm.
but they do have to notify the heirs and then wait for that period to
If
see if
they
someone
come up.
comes forward.
They have only one died. So it's
Yeah.
not included in the title,
Yeah,
but they wanted to sell right away,
yeah.
because that was the idea. We were in the process of
Yeah,
selling.
usually, I mean, when there's a death and the kids or wife or whoever don't need the property, that's good listings to go after because they want to just get rid of the property.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Exchange numbers and then maybe help. you
Yeah,
out.
I can help you with that. I can definitely.
Are you guys independent or? is it independent?
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
independent.
Under the DSCI, yes.
Okay, I relate to some.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's okay. Yeah. Okay. This answers your question about the 1031. Okay, so for those who don't know, the 1031 is for a seller selling an investment property when they're purchasing and they want to not just cash out, but they're purchasing a replacement, and they can use a 1031 and it defers the capital gain, so we don't have to withhold capital gains. But all their money goes into, their proceeds goes to the 1031 exchange company, and they hold it, they have so much time to find a replacement property and close, and then that money that's holding, it goes to purchase the new property.
Yeah, I think you get 3 days, I mean, you get 45 days to identify 3
Right.
properties, right? And then
Yeah.
from there, you have to close.
Those are only, based on the investment properties.
And
right?
only for, not, yeah, only for investment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can- yeah.
not
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
Right, not for, no, and owner occupied, we don't have to withhold any capital gains. It just, they get all their money.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
If for, residential owner occupied,
You can
no 1031.
Yeah, they don't need a 1031. Yeah, no 1031 would apply, and then we wouldn't do any tax withholding.
Yes.
They get an exemption. I'm not an accountant, but the rule's been the same. If it's a single person, they can exempt 250,000 of gain and married 500,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and then just so you
Only
guys,
based on.
Yeah.
just so what you guys know about the 1031, top escrow, we actually just opened a 1031 company.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
I saw something
Yeah,
about
it's
that.
called 1031, top 1031 exchange. So if you guys do need a 1031 for your client while we're in escrow, you guys can definitely use our services, but there's a lot of different services
Because
too.
they need a coordinator.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they have an accommodator, and they're really easy to work with from an escrow perspective.
Right.
And it's just an additional document that gets signed by the seller and buyer.
You also do commercial properties transaction.
We do commercial too,
Yeah.
yes. Commercial, business, mobile home,
Everything.
residential,
Mhm.
refis.
And we even do, like I said, the personal property holding escrows.
Oh, yeah,
Don't
Linda
even
does
have
the
to do with
personal
escrow.
property.
I mean, with real estate,
Right,
yeah. Mhm.
right.
Okay.
Okay. Just a reminder, as, with addendums, if there's tenants in the property, the tenant estoppel will like prorate the rent. These are just good to know as far as what, sometimes newer agents don't know which addendums to use. And I would always advise to go ask the broker, whoever your point of contact is with your brokerage. But some of the, just things I've seen in escrow, and agents will draft up an addendum, and there's a specific addendum for it. Use that because it gives
Yes.
you all the
Well, it has all
legal,
the free words for there.
Right.
Right.
and that's protecting you too,
Yeah.
as an agent with an attorney drafted those documents. So just tenant estoppel, rent back, if their seller's gonna be staying in the property, whether there's a charge or not, the seller in possession, if there's gonna be a lease after sale, the holdback. Oh, okay, there's no addendum for a holdback, but let us know if, for any reason, if you think we're gonna do a holdback, it needs to get approved. As far as if we're holding money after close of escrow, say there's, seller possession, like seller was gonna lease it for 1 or 2 months, or maybe there was like a repair or something, like, okay, we're gonna close, but they're gonna fix this, hold the money.
Yeah.
If we're closing escrow and holding any money, it needs to, just let us know as soon as you can, so we can get approved, because we're limited to like timelines. I don't know what top escrow's policies, I haven't even done a whole back since I've been here, but like some escrow, policies,
Usually for how long, hold back? It depends.
yeah, it depends on what it is. So it's like a tip, like I feel comfortable with 30, 60 days, but any longer than like 90 days, it's like,
What's
well,
the-
I'd have to get management approval just to see like what
So
we're doing there.
Addendum.
You just let us know, we'll prepare an amendment.
What can you do when the seller give you the wrong staples? They said they're collecting such amount of money, and then we close escrow, and they went collecting only 6,000.
Well, those estoppels are
Right.
signed by the tenant too, right?
Right.
So as the new owner, they would have got possession of those copies, then they would present it to the tenant.
They gave me those copies, but when I went to collect the rent,
They're saying they didn't never signed it.
they
and
were
everything.
like, I said, "Well, is this the right check? Sure, yes. They put it was 3,200, it was only 2,200. With the property, and then the other one was, they put 2,500, and it was 1,600.
What a mess. And see, we have to go at face value.
the
We're
auditor-
not like auditors or
They will
whatever's
But the
provided was what we're
agent
gonna go.
Has to take the lease against the estoppels.
True,
too.
yeah, yeah.
What can you do in that, right, nothing, I just made myself quiet, but I was.
Yeah,
Civil-
that's gonna
civil-
be-
Civil
yeah.
action.
Yeah,
Can you do that?
you have to.
Yeah.
That's almost like
That's why some
misrepresentation.
market,
They
they don't
did
like
not.
to have a rent back. They don't
Right.
like
And
it.
that's an
Right,
investment
yeah.
property.
Because
Because
The
they wanna
rent
move
has-
in,
Determining
They don't move
how
out.
much to buy.
right, because then you're dealing with, oh gosh,
But
yeah.
title,
I
even
found
though
that,
you're already entitled to the owner,
And,
if they don't want to move out. it's
Right.
up.
Right, yes, definitely. I mean, I would
Really
consider it
But
risk.
there's
I'm
one,
gonna go
yeah,
over that
but
later
they,
tonight.
they
so let me- I'm
sign the,
actually need a lawyer. Let me
I
call you
can
next.
get you,
yeah, and they're based on the agreement.
because I told you,
Yeah.
this is gonna be a year.
Okay, out of the country, if any of your clients that are gonna need to sign escrow documents are gonna be out of the country, also let us know so we can find out, we can ask them like when they're gonna be gone. If we can get them to sign before they leave, perfect.
Yeah.
If not, they're gonna have to see, make an appointment with the embassy or consulate and,
And
it'll
most
take
of the
some time.
times, yeah, most of the times out of state to make an appointment at the embassy consulate, you can't go like here, walk into a UPS and ask for notary. You have to go online and make an appointment,
Yeah.
so depending on the state,
Yeah.
like we just had one in Australia, they couldn't make an appointment until 2 to 3 weeks out.
And
So like
yeah,
she's saying, the most important is to communicate, and over communicating is more. So like she said, if you know a client's gonna be out of town maybe for a week, just let us know, because then there might be stuff that we can take care of, like she said, and plan to sign before or after,
Right.
just in case.
and then people
Time
forget
limiting.
there's like shipping delays for
Yeah.
international shipping too.
That too.
So if the buyer's signing, I've had transactions where it's loan docs, and one buyer is out of the country, one buyer's here. They're getting the appointment finally and they sign, but then we're waiting on international
Yeah.
shipping. It takes, then the second buyer has to come in and sign. So it slows things down. It can be done, it can definitely be done, but just the sooner advance,
Right.
then the better we're gonna, chance we're gonna make our closing date.
Yes,
So we can coordinate.
Find power attorney. What you miss
Power of attorney, it has to be approved by title and the lender,
lender.
and they don't like to use them because there's so much fraud. It opens
yes,
up to so much fraud by using
Yeah,
a power of
yeah.
attorney.
Mhm.
It can be done, again, it can be done, but it all has to get approved.
Just only based on this transaction.
Right, right.
Right, but
Right.
still they're ensuring the title.
and as an.
Why?
Now, the first thing they ask is why, why can't we just do, they don't want to use it because
Because
of
look,
fraud.
some of them questions is, okay, well, if they can't sign the paper, well, they can sign the power of attorney, why can't they just sign the paperwork, right? So they may come, a lot of questions like that. But as an agent, if you can get your real client to sign the paperwork, you're protecting yourself more too.
Yeah.
Because also there's a room for fraud that you cannot control, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have to protect yourself in all these
Yeah.
transactions too. You don't want, you guys want to stay out of court. You don't want to have issues.
Right, right.
You don't want to deal with that mess.
But it is doable, like she said.
Yeah, it can be done.
Mhm.
We're not the final authority on it. Escrow isn't, title, is insuring it and they have to go through their underwriting process too. So, title would have to approve it. And then if it's a buyer, then the buyer's lender would also have to approve it.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll tap into mobile homes a little bit more, but the last screen, I think I really have. Okay, so our closing day. Everyone knows.
Yeah.
Okay,
Another one.
there's a little bit of a process. That's exciting. All the money's in. We can close escrow once all the conditions have been met. So once all our money is in, all our docs are signed, if there's a loan involved, the loan is funded. Once all our conditions are met, we set up the closing. So funding, if the money from the buyer is in, if it's all cash, or if it's a loan, the lender sends us the money. So that has to happen before we can do any release of recording. Once all the money's in, then we set up with title to record. Most cases it happens same day, like it usually would happen same day, unless it's LA County, they don't do same day recordings, or if it's like a late funding. Then the recording happens. So congratulations, you're recorded, then, you can exchange the keys if that's within your contract, unless it's like 3 days after or something. So, but once we're recorded, it's in the buyer's name, they own the property. And that's in California considered our close of escrow date is the date of recording. Escrow disbursement. So I know for like agents and the sellers, okay, we're closed. When am I getting paid? Like that's, the most important part for like everyone in the transaction is you're doing all this to get paid. So escrow disbursement, I try my best to disperse the day we record. But it doesn't always happen depending on the timeline because we're waiting on like certain things to happen and the money's not always in our control. If there's a lender involved, the money's going to title and title has to do their accounting and, make payoffs, for instance, and then release the money to us. So just know that these all have to do with closing, but they are 3 separate things that are happening. So that's funding, recording, and then same day, if not within 24 hours. So within 24 hours, we're going to completely disperse our transaction. The seller will get paid their wire, all the checks will go out, and then we're officially closed.
And like Chrisette said, it could go out the same day or next day, but let's just say you're doing business with us all the time, like Cecilia. And for some reason on this transaction, she desperately needs money that day. So again, I want to go back to communication.
Yes,
So sometimes there may be a situation where I have to have the money today. Just communicate with us and then we'll try and work with you to make it happen, maybe just for your fee or maybe just for seller. Like, oh my God, the seller needs the money today. But the key is the sooner we know and the communication's done, then we can all put our heads together and have a
Right.
better solution to get to that.
right.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I concur. And fun fact for you guys, our job as escrow isn't done once we send out the checks.
Oh, yeah.
We have to keep an accounting until every check is cleared, has cleared the bank.
Yeah.
So you may hear from us like a month or two later if,
Or
you know,
3
someone
months,
hasn't
yeah.
cashed their check. So like our job keeps on going and our job doesn't end until all the checks have cleared and everything is fully reconciled. Okay, so some of the business that I do, on here, you're not gonna see holding escrows or bulk sale but Linda does specialize in that. I do residential resale. I've done REOs in the past, short sales, manufactured home, vacant land, and refinance transactions. Now, I know you guys you had a mobile home before. Have you ever done a mobile home?
No.
Okay,
Okay.
so with a mobile home, you're using the same residential purchase agreement. You're just adding in an addendum. It's the manufactured
Yeah.
home. Yeah, you're just adding in an addendum. That
Okay.
addendum is gonna tell you what to do. It's gonna like say who the park is,
Right.
what
I've
space,
seen it all.
who's paying the HCD fees.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the same contract. You just add that. You just
Okay.
add that addendum in.
We see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and the only difference is if it's in a park, one of the first things the buyer needs to do as soon as their like money is in escrow, we have a transaction, is go to the park and start the application.
The best way is always cash. No finance.
Yeah, mobile home financing, I mean, yeah, most of, right, because there's a limited amount of lenders and like different requirements.
And do your mobile homes have financing?
Some of them, most of them are cash.
Oh, wow.
Most of them are cash. I've had it, I have a
Financed
few.
one.
Yeah,
I'm
they're
pretty
lending,
sure
I'm not,
Frontier, Newport Beach and Orange County are financed.
yeah, I'm not that familiar with, because most of them are cash.
Okay.
And most of my business is not mobile home,
Right.
but so I'm not all that familiar with like down payment requirements, but I know like they have their financing like guidelines are it's a little
Yeah.
different.
Right.
I know there's like a minimum, like a minimum amount. I know someone that was trying to get a mobile home for 50,000, a single wide. And the mobile home lender was like, no, we have to at least lend 60. So she couldn't get finance for it.
right.
Yeah.
Big enough. though.
Right.
They have the
Right.
minimum requirement.
Right. But it's it's similar as far as like the whole underwriting process. There's really nothing that needs to get notarized. So the buyer just comes in and signs. There's like no deed of trust. There's really nothing getting notarized. It's just,
Right.
but everything is wet signatures for
Mm.
both sides. So the
Yeah.
sellers and buyers will always need to submit or come into the office or return a wet signature because the HCD needs live signatures.
Okay.
So that's something to know.
And the transfer for the mobile home it happens after we close, right? There's some.
Right,
after,
so we
right?
close and so we, once our escrow conditions are met, we just call it, okay, we're closed. There's no recording confirmation. It's just everything's in now. We're closed. And then the escrow officer will send everything over to HCD to process the transfer. I guess one thing for you to know is mobile homes can be registered 2 different ways. There's LPT, which is local property taxation. So they can have, or ILT, which is like in lieu taxation. So they can pay yearly registration fees to HCD, or they can transfer it and roll it into a property taxes and pay the
Oh,
county a tax amount.
Okay,
Mhm.
interesting.
So, but we'll know that once we open escrow, we do a title search. So it's not a prelim, but it's just a 1-page title search that I ordered through HCD. And it says who the owner is, the registered owner and the legal owner. So if there's a payoff, that's gonna be the legal owner.
Got it.
And then it says like, if there are any back registration fees or, taxes, and then, we get a tax clearance certificate. But the escrow, I'll guide you through if you get a mobile home transaction or what needs to happen. Yeah. So that concludes my class.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, thank you.
Very informative.
That was good.
Yeah, it's good to know.
So this was a wonderful class by Top Escrow. We really appreciate it. We'll have them back again. And we thank you all for coming and have a great rest of your week and a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
This is that you have, business cards, because we're gonna put some, downstairs.
Yeah.
In the reception area.